Hello and welcome, my friends, to the Flying Kick. I am Savino, and today I have the immense pleasure to have here with me Alex Rushdy from 13 AM Games, the creative director of the fantastic Dawn of the Monsters. Hi, Alex. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure, man. So, 13 AM Games. How did you come up with the name 13 AM?
Well, every time someone asks me, I like to make up a different answer. So, 13 angry monsters.
13 Angry
Uh,
Monsters.
but I mean, honestly, it just kind of, we started this company while I was still in college.
Oh,
And we were coming up with ideas for the name, and someone just wrote 13 AM on the board. I think based on 12 Angry Men, there's the famous play. Um, but I mean, we were never 12 people, so I don't. Now we like to think of it as a time, 13 a.m. being like an hour that we've invented, um, like a witching hour.
yeah, that's what the idea that I got the first time I saw the name. It's it's a very great name. You said you were in college. When it was? How long ago the company started? How it was the beginning of 13 AM?
So for me personally, I used to be in visual art and design, and I studied that for 2 years, and then I went to study post-grad game design in Toronto at George Brown College. And while I was there, I met a bunch of other like-minded people. And around that time, in the program, they encouraged us to build like a mock company and to operate like a mock company. So we came up with 13 AM. That was in 2014. And we built a very early prototype of Runbow. And it was popular enough that we decided, you know what, let's finish the game and release it and then go get real jobs. But it did well enough that we could just keep doing 13 AM games. And then that was, we released that in 2015. And we're still here today.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And 13 Angry Monsters. You are a huge fan of monster movies, kaiju's, tokusatsu. When when this passion started?
It started pretty early for me. So when I was a kid, I always loved dinosaurs. And I remember going to a department store here in Canada with my babysitter. And actually, I think I've got the exact figure.
Oh,
Yeah, there it is. So I saw this in a department store, this Godzilla,
oh, that's amazing.
and I was like, "What dinosaur is this? I don't know what dinosaur this is. I must have only been 4 or 5 years old." And my babysitter told me, "No, that's not a dinosaur. That's Godzilla." And I was like, "What's Godzilla?" And she was like, "He's like way bigger than a dinosaur." Anyway, she had seen all the movies when she was younger, so she was telling me about Godzilla and Mechagodzilla and Monster Island, and I was just like so amazed. So we went and rented a videotape, and the rest is history. I got hooked.
And you're a huge fan. You have even a company that produce toys.
Yeah. Actually, the Dawn of the Monsters toy. I mean, this is an Ultraman monster, but the Dawn of the Monsters
Oh,
toys, yeah, were made by my other company who makes these kinds of toys, kind of as like a side hobby of mine.
that's amazing. And you even posted today about a new Godzilla movie. You're a huge fan of this type of movies. What are your favorites? Which one are
Yeah,
your
actually,
favorite?
at least when this gets released, it won't be the case. But we're recording this on November 3rd, which is Godzilla's birthday,
Oh,
68th birthday.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, very fitting. So yeah, I mean, as far as my favorite monster movies go, I mean, there's so many. I've seen so many, but the original Godzilla, the 1954 Godzilla, is definitely one of my favorites. Um, in the 90s, there's a trilogy of Gamera movies, Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, and Inventive Legion and stuff. Those are definitely some of my favorites. The original King Kong, I always love. And then it may not be movies, but I watch a lot of Ultraman, the
Oh
TV
yeah,
series.
yeah.
So I've got quite the collection of monster movies that I cycle through all the time.
And that passion obviously influenced Dawn of the Monsters. You know, you create the game based on your passion, I suppose. Uh, how it was? It was a dream for you to create a game like this. You always dreamed to create a kaiju game.
Yeah. I mean, I'd always wanted to make a kaiju game, but I wasn't sure if I'd ever really get the opportunity. And years and years ago, I had seen that SNK, the creators of King of Fighters and Metal Slug, and they'd stopped making games for a while, and then they announced they're coming back to video game development, and I was like, oh, we should talk. Like, I've got a studio that makes video games, 2D action games. You guys make 2D action games, so we actually proposed, the idea of a King of the Monsters remake to them, like a reboot of the old Neo Geo Super Nintendo game. But it didn't, it couldn't come together for whatever reasons. So we shelved the idea. But later on, many years later, we were thinking about that idea, and we wanted to bring it back as an original game, as a cooperative game, because we looked around at all the kaiju games that existed, and there weren't a lot that were like really critically acclaimed. There weren't many that had an in-depth story. There weren't many that had co-op play. So we saw an opportunity, and we're like, yeah, let's make this. This could be really fun. Like, smashing a city with your friend could be really fun. Why hasn't anyone made this yet? So we made it like a beat 'em up. Before, it was going to be kind of a fighting game, so we made it into a side-scrolling beat 'em up and moved forward with it.
Oh, that's great. But the roots of the fighting game still remains a little bit on Dawn of the Monsters, no? Because the fighting mechanics of Dawn of the Monsters is very complex for a beaten up. You can see there's some fighting game influence. How it was, this transformation from a fighting game to a beaten up? Did you use monsters, characters, moves? What did you could use from the fighting game?
Yeah, I think our controls were very much from the move from fighting game to beat 'em up. The controls were still pretty similar. Like, when it was a fighting game, you had a block button, and when we moved to beat 'em up, we were like, you know what? Let's keep the block button, because, I mean, a lot of what we looked at, obviously I played a lot of 2D beat 'em ups, classic beat 'em ups, but I've also played a lot of 3D beat 'em ups, like Bayonetta, God of War, Devil May Cry. So we were looking at those games to be like, hey, how can we take that style of gameplay but still use the framework of the classic beat 'em up? So that's why we kept a lot of the fighting game, style stuff, like special moves and a rage meter, and being able to block and parry and things like that, because a lot of classic beat 'em ups didn't have blocking or dodge rolls or things, but modern beat 'em ups seem to all have those. So we wanted to figure out a way to bridge that gap.
Yeah, and you guys did a fantastic job, because Dawn of the Monsters, it has a unique combat. Even among the modern beaten ups, you don't see this type of combat very often. To be frank, I never saw this type of combat in a beaten up, because it's. I guess you guys captured the essence of the kaijus, the monsters, the robots. It's heavy. It's not slow, but it's very heavy. It's very. You can feel the 40 tons of Megaton wall punching someone or a building. It's simply amazing. It's an incredible game. You said that there wasn't games with kaijus with a good story, and beaten ups and story. Not always walk holding hands. Why did you think that was worth it to put a good story in Dawn of the Monsters?
Well, it honestly came from the fact that I've been a monster movie fan for my whole life, and the truth is, a lot of people like to think, oh, monster movies are it's just like wrestling, right? Like, it's just nothing but monster fights and mindless. But in reality, if if you watch any given Godzilla movie, if you're lucky, maybe 10 or 20 minutes of the movie is monster fights. The rest of the movie is not. It's you know, science fiction, it's drama, it's any number of other things. It's the characters and the story that keep people in seats, that keep people loving monster movies for so long. It's not just the action. If they wanted the action, they could just go on YouTube and watch a compilation. Yeah. So, you know, I realized that for the real deal monster movie fans, they like the stories. The stories and the characters are what are drawing them in and keeping there. And the kaiju are a huge part of that, but they're not the only thing. So I thought, well, you know, video games have been really good at recreating the action, but not the narrative, not the story, not the reason to fight. You know, so I really wanted to bring that to a game.
Yeah, and that was great. The story is fantastic. The characters are amazing. The twist is great. The game is the story of the game is very good. It's very good. I usually when I do my reviews, I told this to Serkan from Hero Concept. I always cut short the part of the story, but you and Hero Concept with Mayhem Brawler, you guys double down on the story, and this is great because as I told him, you can have a good story in any medium. There's no excuse for it. You know, just because the game is fast-paced doesn't mean you can have a good and dense lore behind it. And Dawn of the Monsters has a really dense lore. as far you guys even publish a comic book.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, actually, so the guy who wrote the game, his name is Unai. There's the archives in the game where there's, you know, you can read about the history of the different monsters and the areas and the companies, and you can read a lot of information about the game. That part of the game was actually double its length originally. We had to cut it down to half because there was too many words to translate. You know, it was getting too expensive. So yeah, he really went deep, and he, you know, built this whole world and interconnected it, and you know, it's pretty cool.
That's fantastic. And how did the game perform? I know at launch you guys released the game near Elden Rings, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was a little rough for you guys, but we now 9 months after the release. How the game is now? How do you see the sales?
It's done all right. I mean, definitely lower than we expected. I think that, like you said, our launch was not as big as it could have been because Elden Ring kind of ate up all the news cycle and everything.
Yeah.
But you know, overall, it's actually done pretty well, and especially by the time we release in Japan and by the time we release the DLC, I think sales should be pretty good. But I mean, it's not as big as we'd hoped it would have been. So, you know, if anyone hasn't like reviewed it on Steam yet, please do.
Oh, but, please.
But yeah, it's been pretty good. It was nice to see, honestly, how many people were that excited about a Kaiju game to buy it right away, and especially at least at launch, the physical version of the game outsold the digital one.
Oh, really? That's
which
amazing.
Was surprising to me, which is pretty cool. And another thing that surprised me was, so typically with our previous games, it's usually, you know, Switch sells a lot. After that, really down low is like PlayStation, and really down low is Xbox and Steam. And this time it was like Switch and PlayStation were almost neck and neck. So that was really interesting to see.
That's great.
So,
but consoles are your main public, it seems.
For us, yeah, it's always been consoles. But actually, I got to get an updated report on the sales data to see where we're at. But I mean, typically it's like consoles, especially Switch, are the big seller.
Yeah, playing on the Switch, and after the patch that you guys released that allows 60 FPS, the game plays beautifully. And how was, I'm curious about that now, how was the reception in Japan?
Well, it's not out yet in Japan. It comes out
it's
early next year. But I have been at a few shows, and there have been a couple of demonstrations there, and the response has been really positive.
Oh, that's great because
Um,
the land of Kaiju
yeah,
need this game.
yeah. Although what's interesting is one thing that's been cited really positively in Japan. We got nominated for an award, was the art style, because they thought it looked so much like an American comic book. And it's kind of like, how in I feel like in America people really like anime, and they think anything that looks like anime is really cool. In Japan, it's kind of the opposite, where they're like, oh, that looks American. We think that looks really cool.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
that was kind of interesting to see. Yeah.
That's nice. About the art style, you guys were inspired by the Hellboy comics, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Why,
that was a big inspiration.
why did you choose this style?
So for us, we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we make a kaiju game that looks different from every other kaiju game that's out there? And so most of the time, the kaiju games will just go for either as realistic as possible, or they'll maybe make it kind of cartoony and goofy. And we wanted to do something unique. We wanted to do something stylish and something aimed at an older audience. So what we were looking at for inspiration wasn't like stills from kaiju movies, but the kaiju posters, which are very colorful, very bold, very contrasty. And we thought, okay, how can we translate this into a style that we can execute and create? I mean, there's like 40 monsters in the game. So we looked at comic books and manga, and we really liked the color choices and how the Mike Mignola art has that kind of balance of light and dark. And we thought it would translate really well. So we kind of took a little bit of Mike Mignola and a little bit of manga, and kind of fused them together to create the style.
Yeah, and it looks great. The game is gorgeous, gorgeous.
Thank you.
And now I have to ask you, you guys are preparing DLC for Dawn of the Monsters.
Yeah, we are.
Something that I've been bugging you for a long time, asking when.
Yeah, it took a little longer than we'd wanted to, but we had to finish a bunch of other work.
No, that's all good. I will put a screen that I have here. I guess our viewers will like very much, and we will tell us a little bit about it. Let's see.
Yeah.
All right, there it is. So, what do you have to tell us about the monsters, the DLC? What's going on?
So there's a few things to talk about, but the first and most important thing about the DLC, which it'll be coming next year, is we're going to add a playable character to the game, a brand new original character, but we want the community to decide who to add. So we have these 3 characters that we came up with, and we want the community to vote. There's a poll. It's on the 13am Games website. It's on our Twitter, everywhere. There's a poll where you can vote for which one you want, and whoever wins the poll is the one we're going to make. So the first character here, he's called Daizo-san, and he's a living giant stone statue. And he kind of fights like a sumo wrestler in a way, but you can also rocket off his body parts, kind of fight like he's firing his rocket fist there. So he's a very interesting character. He has the idea of he'll get a bonus if he can hold his rage. So as other characters, you want to spend rage as soon as you get it. With him, if you keep your rage, the longer you keep it, the more powerful he can become.
Oh, that's great. What's the influence for the design?
His influence is so ancient, prehistoric Japan. So there's a period of Japan. Yeah, there's I guess a civilization called the Jomon, the Jomon era, and it's like before samurai were even a thing, before there was feudal warlords. There were the Jomon, and that there's a film called Daimajin that's based off of this concept of an ancient stone statue coming to life. So we're kind of inspired by that. and that's kind of where a lot of the design comes from. And then also like, you know, the anime Giant Robo, where there's this giant robot thing that has like a human character that controls them. So this character actually has a human that uses a flute to control them, communicate with them.
That's great. And we have the pilot right here.
Yeah.
This is his pilot. Great. His name?
Yeah. Let me double check. I've got so many tabs open.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. So her name is
No,
Kaede Nitai, and basically she's part of like a tribe of people living in northern Japan, like the from the Ainu people, and she's the kind of like the most recent shrine maiden for Daizo-san. So she's given this ancient flute that she can use to summon him, and she ends up getting mixed up with Dawn because Daizo-san, it's, you know, we're not sure where exactly he comes from, but he's definitely related to the Nephilim and the kind of ancient civilizations that were involved with the Nephilim.
Great. Let's check the other one. This one. This is amazing. This monster is great.
Yeah, listen, we had a lot of requests for a monkey or an ape, so we wanted to do something with that concept. So this is Xeranoth. And Xeranoth is kind of an ancient forest guardian type of ape. And he was discovered by Dawn as like a first wave Nephilim, a very powerful Nephilim, similar to Megadon, similar to Ganira. And they couldn't figure out how to communicate with Xeranoth or how to control Xeranoth, so they put him on an island in the South Pacific to kind of keep him out of harm's way in terms of populated cities. But what happened was there was a plane crash, and everyone basically perished in this plane crash except for a little girl who washed up on this island, and she learned how to communicate with Xeranoth.
Oh,
and
that's
so
great.
she's tied to Xeranoth. So he's a very aggressively styled character, fast moving. He's got the big claws and antlers and the kind of plant theme. So, we wanted to offer something that he also kind of has the look a bit of, he's got the moose type of antlers there, a little bit of a Sasquatch Wendigo vibe to him. He's a character we're pretty excited about.
Yeah. And that's her pilot, the little girl?
Yeah, that's Li Mei. And so she survived a plane crash and ended up kind of stranded on that island with Xeranoth, and became connected to Xeranoth and learned how to communicate with him. And so Dawn found her and is like, hey, this is another warrior we can use in our battle.
We need you.
We need you, yeah.
And what she's wearing? She's wearing some animal pants.
Yeah, she actually built her own. She lived on the island for a long time, and she used kind of bits from the plane crash and bits of nature, and she was able to build her own clothing. So you can see she's been given a Dawn uniform, but she kind of just hangs it on top of whatever she's wearing underneath. She doesn't really care much for the uniform. She wears what she wants to wear because she's used to living on an island and fending for herself.
No one telling her what to do. She's right.
Yeah, exactly.
And the last playable character that I won't hide it. This is my favorite one. This is amazing. This is give me some my childhood vibes. I don't know if you watched the Changeman. It was.
I know. I've seen some Changeman.
Yeah, it was very popular here in Brazil in the early '90s. Changeman, Jaspion.
Nice. I love Jaspion.
Jaspion is fantastic, and this gives me a lot of Changeman vibes. I can't resist this character. What can you tell us about him?
So that, I mean that was a big part of it. Is when we looked at Dawn of the Monsters, we wanted to satisfy not just Godzilla fans, but fans of all types of tokusatsu, all types of Japanese sci-fi. So we had the giant robot, we had the Ultraman type character, we had Ganira, which is like the giant insect, we had Megadon, which is like a giant dinosaur, and then of course all the other monsters, mechas, bosses, and little winks, nods, and homages. But one that we, a major fan base that we weren't able to quite integrate was Super Sentai. And I grew up watching. For me, it was first with Power Rangers, obviously, and then later on the Japanese Sentai shows. And I really wanted to do something that evoked Super Sentai and evoked Go Lion and Voltron and that kind of stuff. So we started talking about, well, how can we have a character like that in this game? So we came up with Meteor Temujin, and we wanted them to be very different from Tempest Galahad. So Meteor Temujin is a combining robot that was developed actually by a bunch of college students. So they're college students that came up with this on their own. So they're not actually affiliated with Dawn. They're independent. They made this because they want to be able to defend themselves from Nephilim on their own. So Meteor Temujin is the focus of the character is actually on weaponry. So you see how he's kind of got his arms crossed on that sword. So this character can actually equip a different weapon by using a different rage attack. So each rage attack does an attack and swaps the weapon. And then your normal attacks are different depending on which weapon you have equipped. So a lot of depth and variety in this character. A really cool one. We've prototyped some of the moves, and they're quite fun, quite interesting. So it's got like a sword and a battle axe, and I'm trying to remember what the last one was. We might change it anyways, but different weapons. And yeah, so it's a combiner robot as well. So we want to do something with that, maybe with super attacks or something.
Oh, he's definitely my favorite now. What can I do? This is amazing. This is amazing. Let's take a look on his pilots. This is the crew.
Yeah, so this is the crew that built him. I'm trying to remember all of their names. The one in yellow, that's Grace Galvan, or is it? That might have changed actually. As you can see, we're still in development.
Oh no, that's right. That's okay.
Yeah, Grace Galvan. I was right. And she's the one who kind of came up with the concept, and she's like an engineering student. She developed it, and then those are her friends that pilot the different parts of the robot. So they kind of form their own little team, and they have their own unique personalities that sometimes clash with each other, like any good Super Sentai team.
Sure.
And of course, they're color coordinated to their different parts. So Grace is like the head and the wings, and the blue one is, I think it's the left arm, the green one's the right arm, the red one's the torso, that kind of stuff.
And we will have the chance to see Meteor assembled.
I can't promise. I gotta check to make sure I'm not making someone's job hard. But I mean, that's the plan. Is maybe in like the Spawn animation or something. But
yeah.
Generally, keep them together for the fighting.
Oh no, yeah. At least at the beginning of the level, would be very cool to see the many parts assembling and transforming the Meteor. It would be great. And how it will fit on the story? It will have more story. The characters will be voiceover. What are the plans?
So we're keeping we're mostly adding these for the gameplay differences and to play into the new content and the new modes. There's not much stuff in the way of a new story, because if you play through the Dawn of the Monster story with them, the story still stays the same. So they don't have like a new chapter or something, but there is some unlockable stuff in the archives that explains who they are, who the monsters are, and talks a little bit about what happens after the story of Dawn of the Monsters. So
great.
hopefully, if everything goes well and does really well, we can expand further, or bring them into a sequel or something. But for now, we'll see.
A sequel would be nice.
Would be nice. Would be nice.
And the voting will be live. The day this video is live, the 13th, I guess, next Tuesday.
The
No,
8th.
The 8th. Yeah, I'm way ahead. Next Tuesday, today, for those who are watching us.
Yeah, so you can vote right now.
You can vote right now. The links will be on the description of the video, together with the 13 a.m. Social media. And what else? What else we can expect? There is something that you are planning for the game, or is this the last content?
We'll never say never. It depends on how things sell and how popular they are. But right now, this is the only plan we have. Is so come. I don't have the exact date yet, but next year we're going to release the DLC. It'll involve obviously the player character, and then it's going to involve some other content as well. Some other. I can't get too into the specifics of what that other content is.
Okay.
But I'll say that, I think that from our fans, from the community for Dawn, the number one question was like, or complaint maybe was like, oh, I wish there was more content to play. I wish I could keep playing. So we wanted to not just deliver more content, but ways that you can keep playing, and getting better and getting more stuff. So I think people will be really happy with what we've put together. I was playing it the other day. It's very fun. And the other cool thing is we're going to release, obviously, the character and some other stuff will be paid content, but we're also going to release some free content. So even if you just get the game and you don't want to buy the DLC yet, we'll give you some free stuff so that you can still play and keep enjoying the game.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So next year, still with no date, but 2023.
Yeah. We'll have more to announce in the coming months for sure, and more to share. Oh, and actually, one other thing that we'll be adding to the game is once the game releases in Japan, which is early next year, we'll actually be adding Japanese voice and text to all versions. So if you want to play the game with English text but Japanese voice, so it feels like a Kaiju movie, you can. Yeah.
That's amazing. That will be great. That will bring some authenticity to the game, I guess.
Yeah, the Japanese voice is fantastic. I've been listening to it, and it's really well done.
Oh man, that will be great. That will be great. Alex, man, thank you very much for this. It was amazing to see all this new content. We'll be covering this extensively from now on. And man, what else can I say? Thank you very much for being here with me, for conceding me this interview. It was great. I guess my viewers will love to see all of that.
Thank you. I'm glad we finally got to sit down and chat.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
a big fan of your channel.
Oh yeah, we're gonna repeat that in the future. I bet we'll have more content, or for the sequel.
Fingers crossed.
Oh yeah. Man, thank you. See you around.
Thank you very much.
All right. See you, man. Bye bye.
Good to see you. Have a good one.
You too. And that's it for the video, guys. I hope you liked this interview with Alex Rushdy, and I plan to bring more devs to the channel pretty soon. Do you have any dev you wanna see here? Tell me in the comments, and remember, keep it up.